Pretty speechless at this point is how I feel. This is going to be an emotionally fueled recap for you, boy. Luckily, Michigan videos, if you go back and look at our channel from the last 3 years, do probably 90% less views than every other team that we talk about in college basketball world. So nobody will probably even watch this. Nobody will watch me vent about this crappy program right now. Michigan loses to Florida 106 to 101 in double overtime. After Michigan's first 3 losses, I told you I just wanted them to be fun. After Michigan's first 4 losses, I said, well, overtime's kind of fun. After Michigan's 5th loss at home to Indiana, I said, I'm starting to worry this isn't that fun. And tonight, I can unequivocally say that this team is capable of losing fun if the games are 40 minutes long. If I have to watch 10 extra minutes of this team make the same mistakes this team has made for a year and a half under this coaching staff, it's no longer fun. I'm drained. I'm broken. Just like this team is, quite frankly. Just like Doug McDaniel feels tonight when he dropped 33 points and couldn't even walk up and down the court because there's no one on the bench that can give him a rest. What'd you see tonight?
I mean, I saw just looking at before it even got to halftime. I mean, there was a point in this game where Michigan did enough to win this basketball game, like both in regulation and in the first overtime necessarily. I think it fell apart in the second overtime, but just some very confusing, found myself like dumbfounding mistakes. First off, the ball isn't in your best player's hands when the game is tied. And you see that your team is somewhat helter-skelter as Namari Burnett brings it up the court with a chance to win the game. You can see he doesn't really know what to do necessarily. And Juwan holds on to his timeout. And then, you have the whole back and forth of, I thought there was too much time on the clock before the foul, with 3 points left, when they were up 3 points. But maybe there could have been a bang bang decision on that offensive rebound. You fouled the person who got the offensive rebound. I think that was too quick of a decision, and definitely not a decision that Terrace Reed can process this year by the looks of his defense and offense. He looks like he is, I don't know what he's doing. He's on another planet every time he plays. I mean, so I truly felt for Michigan fans, like that's a heartbreaking loss. You get 33, 8 and 5 from Doug. He's tired as hell from running around the court, throwing up floaters. Some of those floaters weren't falling towards the end of the game. Luckily, Olivier Nkamwa is a freak athlete. He himself was able to pour in 24 points in this game. Had some also great defensive plays, I thought, down the stretch too. But it falls apart when the ball is not in Doug's hands. And you look at this game, 45 minutes for Doug, 47 for Olivier, 44 for Terrence Williams, 45 for Terrace Reed Jr., 45 for Namari Burnett Jr., because Trey Jackson's unplayable.
Wait, why are you calling all these guys junior?
Am I calling them all junior? I'm so sorry. My apologies.
I thought this was like a bit or something. Like they're
No,
all
it
sons.
actually wasn't a bit. I'm not really sure where I was going with that. My apologies. But you're getting nothing from anyone else. Jalen Wellen gave you 3 in this game. Trey Jackson's unplayable. Cheddar just didn't really get a shot tonight. In a game where I honestly thought he could have got a shot. It's not like Terrace Reed was playing that amazing. So if this is what the team is going to be, this team's going to be exhausted by the time it gets to January, February, because all these guys are playing major. Like Doug is going to be run down by the end of January. And what he'll have to show for it, by the looks of it, it's not going to be that great of a record or even something to play for. So this is really tough, man. Like Michigan had the game. Doug was going to the free throw line, put him up 3. He's saying, "We got this. Let's finish this game out." And you can't get an offensive rebound. How many offensive rebounds were given up today? I want to say it was 20. 21 offensive rebounds given up in this game. Like, I know that Florida's long and they got Samuel and they got, Hangleton. I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name, but 21 rebounds is just, it's hard to win a game. If they missed shots, they were getting them back. So I don't know. That's a tough one to swallow for Michigan. and then we don't even get to the point about like how every single game you watch this team, it's very fun to watch the staff just be dysfunctional on the sideline. They just look like they're all just doing their own thing and not in tune with each other whatsoever. So I don't know, man. Really sad times for Michigan hoops right now, I would say.
Yeah. I'm going to start by trying to speak to just what I saw tonight, but it's so hard to talk about this team in that context without going broader. It just is. It's really hard after all we saw last season, all we've seen to begin this season, to not have the larger conversation. And we can do that in the second half of this video. But I mean, tonight your starters gave every ounce that they could possibly give. And this, like, don't get me wrong, I think the starters have some talented players in that group of five guys. I also think there's a lot of problems and a lot of holes in that group of five guys. Even if you had a good bench, I still think that you're pretty limited as far as what you can do in the backcourt. Like, Namari Burnett is the only secondary ball handler on the team, and he can be out of sorts a lot. Terrace Reed was a disaster for probably 80% of this game. He had some really bright moments in big spots in the overtimes. He just is not close to what Michigan needed him to be to start this season. And the hope is still he can get there by the end of the year. But he had 5 total rebounds tonight. He's constantly out of position. He's constantly going for blocks that he doesn't get. Like, if you're going to go out of position for blocks, at least get one every now and then. He doesn't. He plays like he just doesn't have a brain, for lack of a better word, and he still doesn't have a go-to post move. It's just really bad. It's really limited play from your starting center. But at the same time, he's the only true big they have. So I know Cheddar's played good, but you don't have like a backup bruiser center you can throw into a game against Florida with a team that beats people up on the board. So, like, to me, I feel bad for the 5 starters because the staff failed them in the offseason when their priority transfer ad was Trey Jackson. And you lost a bunch of guys, but Trey Jackson would have been fine if you were going to go get 3 other guys. And they spent their summer twiddling around with Caleb Love, who they didn't even call after it became obvious they weren't going to get. Will Cheddar spent his offseason on a farm, and he's the only guy that got better in this program except for Doug. I don't know what that says, but yeah, I feel bad. You can't play all your starters 44 minutes in a double overtime game and expect them not to be gassed at the end of it, and that's what happened. But to summarize it from a numbers perspective, I mean, you can go through the numbers. Doug's numbers were stupid. That should have been a Chug McDaniel, but you need to have a win for that to happen. I thought Olivier was really good tonight. I thought Terrence Williams was great tonight. I thought Namari and Terrace Reed had off games, but they were still productive. The bench combined for 21 minutes. They had 3 guys combined for just 21 minutes in a double overtime game. They combined for 3 points, 1 rebound, 4 turnovers, and 4 fouls. That's the worst bench in college basketball. I don't know how any team can win any game with that. I just don't know. And Trey Jackson's had okay games this season. Will Cheddar has had great games this season. Jalen Llewellyn is Jalen Llewellyn. And you banked your entire backcourt on a guy coming off an ACL injury to be able to provide real minutes, and he missed the first month of the year. So I don't know. The roster's flawed. It's broken, and it's a shame because it would almost be easier to swallow all of this if the 2 guys that are at the top of the scouting report weren't so good. Because Doug is that good, dog. Like, Doug is that talented and that good, and he has some boneheaded mistakes, but he is way ahead of where he should be right now. And Michigan is 0-2 in games this season when Doug McDaniel scores 33 points. That's the biggest red flag I've seen.
Yeah, 100%. And also, when you're looking at the starters, it makes it even harder. Granted, you brought up all the stuff about them playing major minutes. It makes it even harder when literally for a majority part of this basketball game, when Doug McDaniel was getting a screen set by Terrace Reed, they were just doubling. They weren't even looking at Terrace Reed. But Doug McDaniel doesn't trust to throw it to Terrace Reed, and I don't really blame him because he just can't. He can't process it. He doesn't. He'll travel probably for the most part if he gets it in that position. It's just it just makes it very tough when Doug is so special, because they were doing drop coverage, I thought, at first, and he was just exposing that. Hit a three, and then he was kind of hesitating, getting to the rim, throwing up that floater that he's really good at, or like that high arcing, like hookish layup shot that he does. That's just has great touch on it. But after that, they're just like, you know what? We're just gonna put pressure on Doug and see if he'll actually throw it to Terrace Reed. And Terrace Reed doesn't even give him an outlet for most of the time. And that it's just odd to me. Like, I didn't think that Terrace Reed played well enough tonight to earn 45 minutes, especially how Will Cheddar has played as of late.
Yeah, I mean, Terrace Reed had 5 rebounds in 45 minutes.
Right.
But what the hell are you
Four
supposed to do?
7 from the line, 5 of 13 from the field, and none of his shots were outside the paint. Like, that's just, I don't know. That it's a little bit. It is not as serious, but like Juwan has some loyalty things, I think, with Terrace, and it's not as serious as well. But like the regression of Terrace this year has been shocking to me. Like, he's closer to Madi Sissoko this season than of anything. And I was a guy who was coming in this season. I thought he'd be well prepared to contribute to this team and step up. And I completely whiffed on that one.
Yeah, I mean, Marty's in the right spot, at least sometimes. Like, I'd say what you want about Marty with all his mistakes and all his limitations, and he has bricks for hands. Marty will occasionally find himself in the right spot defensively. I don't know that I've seen Terrace Reed in the right spot defensively once this season, except for the final play of regulation that he blocked out of bounds, and he fouled the guy. They just didn't call that foul. So, officiating, I did think was horrible. I know that's like the losing fan thing to say. I thought it was horrible for both sides. I thought they were wildly inconsistent. I thought things that were called fouls all game were not called fouls in big spots, including the Terrace Reed foul. I thought things that were called or were not called fouls were called fouls in some big spots. It was just really, really strange. There were countless times Doug ended up on his back on the ground and it was not a call. And then there were touch calls that different Michigan players benefited from at times. It was really, really strange. It's not an excuse. It's just an observation I had watching the game. Let's talk about the end game stuff. I have a thread that I tweeted right now that is screenshots of every game that Michigan has led in the second half of in the last 2 seasons and a month. Spoiler alert, there's a ton of them. There actually weren't that many from 2 seasons ago. That team that wasn't very good, but they ended up making a Sweet 16 run. This is not how I remembered it, but they lost a lot of blowout games. They didn't lose a lot of close games. The close game loss stuff started last season, where essentially every game they lost, or more often than not, other than at the Breslin and against Purdue last year, they had like an 8-point second half lead, whether it was with 10 minutes left or whether it was with a minute left. Like, Michigan lost games of all varieties, but the common denominator was they constantly had a lead in the second half. They never closed. That's carried into this season. And last season, everybody told me it was personnel related. It was about the roster. It wasn't about anything. It's just bad luck. I don't buy that anymore. This is a totally new team with totally new players. The issues still persist. And I get the roster absolutely has limitations too. But I don't think we can excuse mistakes Juwan Howard made in the summer for mistakes Juwan Howard's also making in the ends of these games. I mean, and look, Juwan hasn't been the head coach for some of these, so it's the whole staff's fault. It's not just his name's fault. But tonight, I mean, you scratched and clawed your way to find yourselves with a 3-point lead with 20 seconds left. I get Florida's not a great shooting team. They certainly weren't shooting the ball well tonight. But you fouled up 3. Like, that's what I would have liked to see. I believe that's the smart play. I believe that always gives your team a better chance to win. And when you don't foul up 3, when Tyrese Samuel gets the rebound, you certainly could have fouled him. You're right. I think that's a tough play for Terrace Reed to make on the fly. But if you're a good coach team, if you're a well-coached team, you could definitely coach your team to say something about that in the timeout before you went back to action that, hey, if the guy who can't make a free throw, who's 3 for 8 from the line tonight, gets an offensive rebound, which he does 80% of the time, we miss a shot, foul him, grab him. Like,
and on top of that, like, when you're in the huddle, you know this. Coaching is simple, even when you're at any level. you're not just talking about that possession. You're talking about outcomes. Like, why in that huddle, if Juwan's saying what he's saying, there's not one of those, there's not Sadi or Phil or whoever assistant you want to say, whatever staff member they're not saying, hey, if they do somehow hit a shot, if they hit a two, if they hit a three, and there's like, go get a timeout, or like go dribble up to the point and go get a timeout. Like, it's just having that type of mental error in that spot is just like, it's bad. And if it's, I know you posted that thread, and I'd be interested to see like what are the actual end game plays, end game situations look like as far as like shot selection, turnovers, execution on that part. But like, I was just in awe watching Namari Burnett dribble up like that, and Juwan just stood there and just watched it happen. Like, that's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
And
That
Namari Burnett pulling up for three, and even if Juwan doesn't call a timeout, like, why is Namari Burnett shooting that shot?
because that's the best Amari can do. I mean,
Is it?
that's
I actually thought he did some things getting to the basket. Like, he had that one wing one that I remember where he did like a little double between the legs and kind of went past guys. Just because I thought, you know, the wing players and perimeter players towards the end of the game in a lot of situations for Florida started to realize like, oh, we are taller than Doug McDaniel. Let's go to the basket, see what happens. Like, Terrace isn't helping enough. I mean, Olivier might help, but there was a lot of times where they were going to the basket because they knew they're getting offensive rebounds, and they knew that Doug was a little bit on the smaller side. So I don't know. I thought that Namari had a couple possessions late in the second half where he was able to get by his guy and get fouled. But I mean, I think you watched him a little bit more than me. I feel like he could have done that a little bit more. He's a
no,
better player.
he's I don't I guess you're right in a vacuum. Certainly he missed the shot, so it's easy to say that. Namari Burnett has not been good going to the rim this season. He's missed a lot of very easy looks at the rim. So I don't think he's a guy that has a lot of confidence or a lot of skill to just like go 1-on-1 and go get a layup at the rim. Especially against the Florida bigs who would have helped. And if Namari had to like make a decision in that spot beyond just put my head down and try and score, I don't think that ends well. The much larger issue with that play to me is, yeah, you're right. One, maybe someone call a timeout. Like when you see the ball's not in the guy with 33 points in his hands, maybe call the timeout. Two, and this gets really difficult. It gets really hard to criticize Doug for
Go
anything.
go get that. Go get that bitch.
Right, but I don't know, like it's like the two. I don't know how I'm supposed to weigh a guy who played 45 minutes tonight, had 33 points, was spectacular from the field, went 12 for 13 from the free throw line, was on his ass probably 30 times, had 8 rebounds, by the way, had 3 more rebounds than our starting center. He's 5'11". Like, I have a hard time criticizing this kid for anything because Doug McDaniel is giving every ounce of what he can give to this basketball team, and it's phenomenal, and I appreciate every second of it, and I'm sick to my stomach that I know I'm not going to get to watch it for 2 more seasons after this year because this coaching staff completely failed him. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do. With that said, yeah, Doug goes away every now and then in big moments. And that's hard. It's hard. I thought in double overtime, he was clearly gassed, but he couldn't create separation. When he did have the ball, he just couldn't beat his guy one-on-one anymore. He had been beating his man for 45 minutes straight. And then the final 5 minutes of the game, he couldn't do anything. I attribute that to him being gassed. But yeah, when there's 7 seconds left in a tie game, I'd like to see the kid go get the ball. There was a possession earlier in the second half where I think Michigan had like a 6-point lead at this point. And Doug kind of tried to do his little ISO thing, and Florida, give him credit. They did a really good job defending him. He had to turn around, and he came back out, and he kicked it to Terrence Williams. And the moment he dropped the ball off to Terrence Williams, Doug turned with his back from the ball completely and just jogged to the opposite corner. It's like Doug does these little things in little moments in these games where it's like he doesn't know how important or how dominant he is yet. I honestly kind of attribute it. This is going to be crazy. Michigan State fans aren't going to like this. I kind of attribute it to Cassius Winston, where Cash is a way better playmaker for others. There's no comparison there. But I think it took Cassius a couple of years to realize how important he was to Michigan State's offense. Like, I think by the time Cassius was a junior and obviously his senior year, Cassius basically knew, like, oh, every single possession, it's me. Every single possession. There isn't a possession, it's not me. Because I'm playing with Matt McQuaid. Matt McQuaid's not a give him the ball and get out of the way. Like, he had all the parts around him that he needed, But every possession for 40 minutes, it was Cassius Winston's show. And it takes guys a couple years to get there. Doug is way closer to getting there than he should be, but he's not there. And it might be because he's gassed. It might be mental. But right now, like if Doug's action gets cut off and there's 12 seconds on a shot clock and he has to dump it off to somebody else, Doug is dumping it off and then quitting the play. And he's going away. His head's down. He's out of the play. And Terrence Williams went on to throw it across the court for a live ball turnover. So
and even when it's not even the passing part, there was parts of overtime where he just was. I mean, I chalk it up to being he was too gassed to even go get the ball.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like you said, because of the situation, because of who he is, because of what he's done, like you gotta power through that. No one should be able to keep him from getting the ball. I don't care if he has to run and get under Terrence Williams like a center and get down there and have him snap him the basketball. Like you got to do something to go get the ball because the team needs the ball to be in your hands. And also, if I'm Juwan, I'm screaming like get Doug the ball and Doug go get it. So it's a lot of things. Michigan should have won this basketball game. That's what it really comes down to. They were, like you said, up 3 with 20 seconds left. Find a way to win the basketball game. You did what you had to do. Todd Golden did a great job of doing a Todd Golden towards the end of the game. Just no offensive sets, just doing random things, bad shots. Luckily for them, they got a lot of them back on the offensive boards. But other than that, I was like, this is here for the taking, and just could not close it out. And that in that fourth period or in the first overtime.
Do you know how much it hurts me to sit here and look a camera in the eyes and say I got by Todd Golden?
Yeah, I know.
Bad, bad is the answer.
Yeah.
It hurts bad. It hurts very bad.
I know.
So, oh boy, hi. I'd like to do something. Actually, I had a quick Doug McDaniel line. I didn't wrap up the Doug section, but I feel obligated to say this because I like this line. Doug McDaniel is a magician, Cart.
Yeah, he's special.
He has 1,000 tricks up his sleeve, and you get to see them on full display for a 40-minute show twice a week. Started in November. He's got a residency, Cart. I don't know if you know. He's got a residency in Ann Arbor. He's got 3 months left. You get to buy tickets to the Doug McDaniel show for 40 minutes twice a week, and you get to see him work his magic. But one of his biggest tricks, he can make himself disappear.
That's good.
That's good, right?
That's good.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, about 5 minutes left in the show. Occasionally, he likes to make himself disappear, which again, it's fatigue, like we already said. But yeah, I'm going with that. He's the magic man. He's the magician. He just makes himself disappear sometimes. So last thing I want to end on with Michigan. This is broader than the game, so shut it off, Michigan fans, if you don't want to hear this from me. But I was thinking about it, and I think a lot of excuses have been made. Justifications maybe is a better word than excuses. I think a lot of justifications have been made by Michigan basketball fans in the last 2 years to try and rationalize why this program is where it's at, and also believe Juwan Howard is a reasonable-minded basketball coach. Like I think whether it's, off the court, whether it's on the court, whether it's roster building, whether it's in-game situational stuff, there have been decisions that fans have irrationally kind of just defended and said, this makes sense. This is why this is happening. It's not a larger issue. It's not all these issues all at once. I'm done with it. I'm ready to pull the Band-Aid off. This is where I'm at with Juwan Howard and how I feel about everything. Cart, I'm a dad, right? I got a daughter. Yeah. Like if my daughter poops while we're out to dinner at a restaurant, she just poops and everybody can smell it. That's like, ultimately it's my responsibility, right? I should probably hold her accountable for that. But, that's on me. I took my daughter to dinner. She's pooping, the restaurant smells. If my daughter is at the mall with me, if we're just at the mall one day and my daughter starts screaming her head off, just shrieking, making a scene, probably not the greatest look for me. Like I got to be held accountable for that. But, at the end of the day, it's my daughter, right? my daughter grabs a crayon because I left a crayon on our table or something, and she just starts, just drawing all over the table. Makes a huge mess drawing on the table. It's a big issue, right? Like, again, probably on me. Probably need to make sure I leave the crayons in a better spot. But you know what, Car? You know what the common thread of all of that is? My daughter's 6 months old. She's a baby. So, like, babies can make mistakes. And when babies make mistakes, they don't have to be held accountable for them because they're babies, right? They're babies. Like, let's just be, she's a baby. She does stupid things because she's a baby. She's not an adult that's paid millions of dollars to do a job. She's just a baby. She's 6 months old when she poops and cries and colors on the table. She's a baby. Juwan Howard is not a baby, Carter. Juwan Howard actually can be held accountable when he does things like, I don't know, spend his entire summer trying to build his roster around Terrence Shannon without vetting it, or then making the same mistake the next summer later when he spent the whole summer trying to build his roster around Caleb Love without vetting it, or when it's 2 minutes left in a game against Iowa and you're up 8 points and you can't win the game because you're just a shitty situational coach, or when you're up 9 against Vanderbilt with 90 seconds left in the game and Terrence Williams is bringing the ball up court, or when you're up 3 against Florida and you don't foul up 3 and you haven't properly coached your team to get the ball to Doug McDaniel in that spot. Maybe coincidentally, those are all situational things, or the other 16 times this has happened where Michigan's blown a lead in the second half in the last 6 months that they've played basketball games. Who can be held accountable? The guy that's not a baby, the guy that's paid to run that program, Juwan Howard, or Cart, when he had his 4th physical altercation in 3 seasons. If you don't like the on-the-court stuff and you don't like the roster-building stuff, then let's talk about who he is as a person. Let's talk about who he is when the bright lights are on. Let's talk about who he is when the bright lights aren't on and just the practice tape is rolling. Let's talk about how he's the only coach in the country that has had this many quote-unquote incidents that have had to be investigated by his own school. But we keep justifying them, even though he's an adult who gets paid millions of dollars to do this, and he's not a 6-month-old baby. I don't understand it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't get it. I don't get it. I think this guy has failed in every possible aspect that a head coach could for the last 18 months. And I still believe the guy can coach basketball. This ain't about, does he run good offense? This ain't about if he has the more talented team, what happens? This is about where he has driven Michigan's program to. He's driven it off a cliff in less than 24 months, from a program that could compete for national championships to a program that can't even sniff the NCAA tournament right now. And it's entirely on him. And other people in the program know it's entirely on him. That's part of why we're at where we're at right now. And it's not changing until he's gone. So rip the Band-Aid off. That's my plea to Michigan fans. Stop making excuses for this adult man who's paid millions of dollars to do a horrible job at his job.
Generational rant right there. A lot of truth in that rant as well. 3 things come to mind, or not even 3 things, because the first thing was that it was a generational rant. Second of all, are some tendencies between Juwan and babies. If we really want to break that down, I can get a thesis going on that. And third, and I think you said this, but I'm going to say it in a different way. What has Juwan done to earn this leniency or making excuses for him? Is it because he played? Is it because he played there? Is it because he's a Michigan man? Is it because he has had the Sweet 16 and he does have a Big Ten title as a coach under his belt, shared title, whatever you want to say? I don't understand where the leniency is coming from, Juwan. Why isn't he being held accountable? And I'm trying to find reasons why. And I just don't see it, because you point to all these facets and all these attributes that come with coaching, and he's failing at them right now. His staff is dysfunctional. He has issues with, altercations, call it off the court, whatever you want to call it. He has issues on the court with his team's success. And it's, I don't know. It's just, I don't understand like you said, why the Band-Aid just won't be ripped off. It's time. It's time. It's time. You got to start over, and you got to start a hiring cycle where Doug McDaniel is in the room for every candidate, and he gets to decide who the next coach is.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I don't know. My progress. I feel like this is me truly ripping the Band-Aid off, because my progression on this has been, you know, this from all the times we talked about it. My progression on this has been, I want to see what it looks like without Hunter Dickinson. I said, I don't know how you can square if it's Juwan Howard's fault or Hunter Dickinson's fault or both. Well, looking back on it, Cart, not Hunter Dickinson's fault, not at all. Maybe Hunter Dickinson's crazy personality was partially so cringy because of what Juwan Howard allowed him to do. Because you know what I've noticed? Hunter Dickinson's not doing a lot of the bullshit he did at Michigan, at Kansas. And coincidentally, that team looks really good. So I said I wanted to see it. I see it. And yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't know where this goes. All I know is it's off a cliff, and I don't think it's coming back at this point. So rip the Band-Aid off, Michigan fans. I'm just sad. Just really sad. It's hard to get outcoached by Todd Golden.
That should be the true telling sign that it's Joe over. It is.
Riley Kugel doesn't make any sense.
We should have known that when Sean Paul told us he's a top 10 pick.
Do we have to keep doing Michigan videos? Like, I don't want to run from it, but also I don't think anyone cares or watches these.
You don't feel better at all after getting that off your chest whatsoever?
No, I hate myself for this card. It's 11:32 p.m. Eastern. We have 3 more recaps to do tonight. It takes me a good hour to get them all up when we have 4 of them and we have 8 of them to upload. So I'm just self-loathing and not happy and not sleeping. I hate it. I hate everything about this.
Thanks a lot, Juwan.